He wasn't a Wall Street prodigy, he didn't even finish college. Yet in just a few short years, this young man built a billion-dollar empire only to destroy it overnight. How did one dropout outsmart the smartest minds in finance and fool the entire world while doing it? Wall Street has always been a place of power, prestige, and promise. It's where fortunes are made and lost in seconds. But over the years, it's also become a playground for risk-takers, visionaries, and sometimes manipulators. From the dot-com bubble to the 2008 housing crash, history has shown us that financial markets aren't just numbers on a screen, they're built on trust. And when that trust is broken, the consequences are catastrophic. In the early 2010s, a new wave of financial disruption began to rise. Tech was no longer just changing the way we shop or talk, it was coming for money itself. Crypto, decentralized finance, fintech startups, these buzzwords weren't just trends. They were rallying cries for a generation that had lost faith in traditional institutions. Enter the boy geniuses, young entrepreneurs who didn't wear ties or talk in jargon. They wore hoodies, spoke in code, and promised a future where money was free, fast, and fair. Among these rising stars was a name no one could ignore. He was young, barely out of his teens, yet charismatic, articulate, and terrifyingly intelligent. He dropped out of an elite college, citing boredom with the system. Instead, he turned his dorm room into a lab, building algorithms, testing market theories, and obsessively studying how money moved. By 21, he had launched his own crypto hedge fund. By 23, he founded a trading platform that would soon become one of the most talked about in the world. It wasn't just the technology that drew people in, it was the story. He portrayed himself as the anti-Wall Street hero, someone who didn't care about wealth or status, only about making finance more ethical. He slept on beanbags in the office, wore the same t-shirt every day, and gave away millions to charity. Reporters called him the next Buffett, and magazines plastered his face on covers with titles like The Savior of Crypto and The World's Youngest Billionaire You Can Trust. Investors fell hard. So did celebrities, athletes, influencers, and politicians. His trading platform, let's call it Nova Trade for now, was sleek, simple, and promised lightning-fast crypto transactions. It wasn't just an exchange, it was a movement. Nova Trade raised billions in capital, backed by some of the most powerful names in finance. People were convinced they were part of something revolutionary. But behind the scenes, the empire was built on a dangerous illusion. To understand how it all went wrong, we need to understand the mechanics of this so-called innovation. At the heart of Nova Trade was another company, a hedge fund he secretly controlled. While the public saw two separate firms, a trading platform and an independent investment firm, the reality was far murkier. Money flowed between them in ways no one fully understood. The lines between customer funds, investment bets, and personal accounts blurred into something far more sinister. This wasn't the first time something like this had happened. Decades earlier, Bernie Madoff ran a similar scheme, though his world was far less flashy and far more traditional. What made this new con so dangerous was its speed. Billions were moving in milliseconds thanks to algorithms and high-frequency trading. Regulators couldn't keep up. Neither could auditors. And to make matters worse, the entire operation was shielded by the mystery and complexity of crypto, a world already rife with scams, rug pulls, and untraceable wallets. But there were warning signs. A few skeptical journalists questioned how Nova Trade was making its profits. Competitors whispered about strange price gaps and shadowy market behavior. A former employee leaked internal documents that hinted at irregularities. But each time, the young founder went on Twitter or gave an interview, calm and confident, dismissing the rumors as FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And the public believed him. After all, how could someone so generous, so humble, and so smart be lying? The truth was that he wasn't just running a company, he was running a persona, a perfectly crafted image of a financial messiah. And it worked. Until one day, it didn't. As billions hung in the balance and the cracks began to show, the world would soon learn that behind the t-shirts and philanthropy, was a dark secret. A deception so vast, it would rock the financial world to its core. And it all started with a single, simple question. Where did the money go? At first, the cracks were barely noticeable. A delayed withdrawal here, a vague press release there, but those who were watching closely sensed something deeper. An unease that rippled beneath Novatrade's polished surface. Rumors spread in Reddit threads and niche crypto forums. Is Novatrade insolvent? Why can't users withdraw funds? The company assured everyone it was just a technical glitch, maybe a backlog, but people were scared. And in finance, fear spreads faster than facts. Then came the leak. An anonymous whistleblower, later revealed to be a former executive, released damning documents. They showed that the hedge fund affiliated with Novatrade, let's call it Quantum Edge, was not just investing customer money, it was gambling with it. Billions of dollars in user deposits had been secretly funneled into highly speculative trades, risky bets on obscure cryptocurrencies, leveraged positions that could implode with the slightest market dip. And all of it was happening behind a veil of fake balance sheets and internal cover-ups. The reaction was swift and brutal. Customers rushed to pull their funds from Novatrade. The platform froze withdrawals, citing liquidity concerns. Panic erupted. Twitter lit up with desperate users. Some had their life savings locked up. Others had sold their homes to invest in what they believed was the future of finance. One woman from Texas posted a tearful video saying she put her kids' college fund into Novatrade because her favorite athlete endorsed it. He said it was safe, she sobbed, he said we could trust him. But trust was already gone. As the digital bank run accelerated, more details emerged. Novatrade had been propping up the value of its own token, let's call it NVT, by secretly using customer funds to buy and inflate its price. That meant the company's apparent wealth was an illusion. A house of cards built on circular transactions and hype. As soon as people stopped believing, the whole structure began to collapse. Within 48 hours, Novatrade went from one of the largest crypto platforms in the world to a frozen corpse. Billions vanished. The founder, once hailed as a genius, disappeared from public view. His Twitter account went silent. His mansion in the Bahamas was suddenly dark. The financial press descended like vultures. CNN, Bloomberg, the New York Times, all scrambling to piece together what had gone so catastrophically wrong. But the more they uncovered, the stranger it got. Behind closed doors, Novatrade had no board of directors, no compliance team, no risk management protocols. Instead, the company was run by a close-knit group of 20-somethings, many of them friends from college, living in luxury villas, partying at nightclubs, and making multi-million-dollar decisions with little more than a spreadsheet and a gut feeling. It wasn't a company, it was a clique. And at the center of it all was the dropout turned billionaire, whose charm had cloaked the wrong. Investigators later found encrypted messages showing that he was well aware of the risks and the lies. One message to a colleague read, "We're too deep in. If we stop now, we're done. Well, just delay the audit. We'll fix it later." But later never came. As federal investigations launched, the Securities and Exchange Commission filed charges of fraud, conspiracy, and market manipulation. A class action lawsuit followed, with thousands of victims demanding justice. Some had lost tens of thousands, others millions. A retired couple in Florida said they sold their pension stock to buy Novatrade tokens after seeing a glowing ad during the Super Bowl. In tokens, they took a different ad and called it Minority with a CC. "We thought it was the future," the man said. "Now we can't even pay our mortgage." But perhaps the most gut-wrenching twist came when it was revealed just how close regulators had come to stopping it. Months before the collapse, internal emails showed that whistleblowers had contacted US officials, warning them of accounting irregularities and misuse of funds. But those warnings were buried, dismissed, passed along the chain without urgency. Why? Because no one wanted to believe the golden boy could fall. The founder had become a symbol of innovation. To question him was to question the future. And so, like Icarus flying toward the sun, he was left unchecked. Until he burned everything. As the dust settled, people began to realize this wasn't just about one man or one company. It was a reckoning, a reflection of how easily charisma can mask corruption, how quickly technology can outpace oversight, and how millions can be lost, not just in money, but in trust. But the most haunting part? No one saw it coming, or maybe they did and just didn't want to look. It all came crashing down on a cold November morning. News broke that NovaTrade had officially filed for bankruptcy. The number was staggering: $32 billion, 0 cents in assets. Gone. The founder, once hailed as the next Steve Jobs, was now being called the biggest fraudster since Bernie Madoff. In just 72 hours, investors watched in horror as their wealth evaporated. Pension funds, life savings, college tuition, all wiped out with the press of a button. The financial world stood still. A system supposedly built on transparency, regulation, and security had been shattered by a 28-year-old dropout and his inner circle of coders, gamers, and influencers. And then he spoke. After days of silence, the founder finally appeared on a live stream, disheveled and shaky, his once confident voice now riddled with panic. He didn't deny the collapse. In fact, he admitted much of it, but claimed it was all a miscalculation. "I never intended to defraud anyone," he said, eyes darting from screen to screen. "It just got out of control." But the words rang hollow. They felt rehearsed, insincere, a desperate PR play from a man who no longer controlled the narrative. Reporters tore into him. How could billions go missing without anyone knowing? Why weren't client funds segregated? Why were loans being made to Quantum Edge without collateral? But his answers were evasive, often blaming accounting mistakes, bad data, or market volatility. Not once did he apologize to the people who had trusted him, people who had lost everything. Behind the scenes, law enforcement was already closing in. FBI agents raided NovaTrade's headquarters. Federal prosecutors filed multiple charges including wire fraud, securities fraud, and money laundering. The U.S. Attorney's Office released a statement calling it one of the most brazen and deliberate financial deceptions in modern history. The indictment painted a grim picture. Customer funds were secretly transferred to Quantum Edge and used to cover failing investments. A hidden code in the NovaTrade platform allowed these transfers to happen without public detection. More than $10 billion, 0 cents, was funneled out in this way, money that was supposed to be sitting in user accounts. Perhaps most damning of all, the founder had created a back door into the financial system, a literal line of code that allowed him to move money without triggering alerts. He had programmed the system to lie, to show users their funds were safe even when the accounts were empty. It wasn't a mistake. It was methodical, planned, and deeply criminal. As the trial neared, the world watched with bated breath. The courtroom was packed. Victims, reporters, ex-colleagues, and former friends. In the front row sat a man who had invested $2 million, 0 cents, after the founder personally called him, promising full transparency and zero risk. He lost it all. Testimony after testimony painted a chilling portrait of manipulation. Employees described a culture of blind loyalty, where questioning the founder was seen as betrayal. A former software engineer recounted being ordered to delete everything just days before the collapse. Another said they were offered bonuses to stay quiet. One of the most gut-wrenching moments came when a single mother from Ohio took the stand. She had invested her entire divorce settlement into NovaTrade after watching a YouTube influencer rave about the platform. With tears streaming down her face, she whispered, "He didn't just steal my money. He stole my future." And still, the founder showed little remorse. During cross-examination, he defended his actions as ambitious, not malicious. He even said he believed he could have fixed everything if only the market hadn't turned. But the jury saw through it. In just 6 hours, they returned with a verdict: guilty on all counts. The judge called him a symbol of unchecked greed and delusion, sentencing him to over 100 years in federal prison. The reaction was global. Markets trembled. Trust in crypto vanished overnight. Other exchanges scrambled to prove they weren't next. Governments pushed through emergency regulations, and thousands of lives were left in financial ruin. But perhaps the most haunting image came from the courtroom itself. As the founder was led away in handcuffs, someone in the gallery shouted, "Was it worth it?" He paused just for a moment. No answer, no regret, just silence. That silence said it all. This wasn't just a financial collapse. It was a moral one. A story not just about numbers or tokens, but about how easily a clever lie can dress itself as truth, how charisma can cloud judgment, and how one man's ambition, left unchecked, can become everyone else's nightmare. If this story made you think twice about who you trust with your money, hit like and subscribe for more eye-opening investigations. What would you have done if your life savings vanished overnight? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We read every one. Let's keep this conversation going.